Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Inspire the Next Generation with a Career in Education webinar. My name's Giuseppe Marino, and I'm a member of the student recruitment team at Federation University. It's a pleasure to have you here joining us for this event, and you may be watching this as a recording post-event, at which point you're welcome to contact us at a later stage with some details we'll provide at the end for more information. But we're looking forward to a really great session to talk about some of the great opportunities for study and, of course, your careers in the education sector. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands and waters where our campuses, centres and field stations are located, and pay our respect to elders past and present, and extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander and First Nations peoples. So as I mentioned, my name is Giuseppe Marino. I'm the manager of the student recruitment team at Federation University, and I'm joined by a great list of guests who are academic staff and experts in the field of education teaching with us here at Federation University. Firstly, Dr. Heather Ernst, who's a lecturer in mathematics, primary and secondary, and also the course coordinator of our Bachelor of Education Studies, which we'll talk a bit about today. Also introduce Dr. Scott Jukes, who's a senior lecturer in outdoor and environmental education. And finally, Dr. Brad Beasler, who's a course coordinator in Bachelor of Secondary Education, Health and PE. So a big thank you to all three academic presenters. It's a real thrill to have you online today, and I'm sure we'll be able to cover some great information and also answer your questions if you're joining us live today. And that's a really good prompt to remind you that we do have a Q&A function available in this session. You're welcome to post a question in the chat at any stage. And if you don't wish to post it during the session, you can always reach out to us later on. As I said, I'll provide some contact details at the end of the webinar. So to begin with, we'll have a bit of an overview of the education courses that we offer at Federation University. And you may be surprised, but for a smaller university, we offer an incredibly diverse range of different education courses. And Heather, I'll throw to you to start talking about some of the courses that we offer.
So hello, and I'm very pleased to be speaking with you today, talking about our Bachelor of Education, Early Childhood and Primary or Secondary. They're all 4-year programs that will get you accredited to be a teacher in the education department, and also many other options as well. Our early childhood focuses on 6 weeks old till kindergarten, and can also be primary as well. Our primary focuses on our primary school students, which can have an inclusion, maths, science or literacy focus. And our secondary, you focus on 2 areas that are taught in secondary school, and we have about 12 different things that you can focus on in that.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Heather. And we'll go into a bit more detail about some of the study areas in a moment. I'll now hand over to Brad to briefly talk about some of the health and physical education courses we offer.
G'day everyone. So as you can see there, the course that I'll be talking about is the Bachelor of Secondary Education, Health and Phys Ed. So likewise, it's a 4-year degree that at the end of that degree, you'll be qualified to teach health, also physical education, and you'll also have what we call as a minor. So you'll have another string to your bow, so you can choose from minor specializations such as science or maths or English or outdoor education and a few others. So at the end of the day, you're qualified essentially to teach in those 3 areas. It is a Bachelor of Secondary, but we also do have a lot of our students do end up in primary schools as health and phys ed specialists. But yeah, the majority will end up in a secondary setting.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Brad. And I'll hand over to Scott to give an introduction for the sport, physical and outdoor education courses we offer.
Yeah, so the Bachelor of Sport, Physical and Outdoor Education can be a bit of a mouthful, so we call it SPOE for short. But this is the degree that I coordinate and teaching to. So this is a 3-year degree, so it differs a little bit to the other degrees you've just heard about in that it's a little bit shorter and it doesn't necessarily qualify you to become a teacher. You can use the first year of the SPOE degree as a pathway into the Bachelor of Secondary Education, Health and Physical Education. Or you can continue the 3-year degree and then study a Master's of Teaching afterwards if you want to become a teacher. But also we have plenty of students that come and study this degree because they want to get into outdoor education and maybe work for outdoor education providers, or maybe they're interested in things like community sport outreach programs. And teaching in a classroom isn't necessarily for them, so they study the SPOE degree to still be involved in education, but not necessarily always in a classroom.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott. And you mentioned pathways, and that's a really good segue into our Bachelor of Education Studies. Heather, did you want to provide an overview of that course?
So the Bachelor of Education Studies is a 3-year degree, and the first year is a pathway into any of those other education courses on the list there. And that's for people mainly who don't get the ATAR or don't have the prerequisites to go straight into the other programs. But the first year is identical to the pathway, the course that you really want to do. So you're not going to lose any time at all. Or you could stay in the Bachelor of Education Studies, do the 3-year degree, and then you've got a choice whether you want to do a master's and become a teacher or go on to some other sort of education role. And we'll talk about that more in a little bit.
Excellent. That's great. Thanks, Heather. There's certainly lots of great pathways and options, and we're here to provide you with that guidance and advice as you make your way through your journey to studying with us. Finally, it's not the major focus for this webinar, but I did want to mention that we also provide a range of master's degrees. So as an example, you may be a graduate who has a business degree or a science or an arts degree, and you're looking to gain your teaching or initial teacher education qualification. You can come back and do a 2-year master's course with us, and that will enable you to get the qualifications you need to become a teacher. So great pathways, lots of options, and as our staff have just said, a huge range of options all the way from the early childhood through to secondary. So we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. Before we do, I'd like to just talk for a moment about the student experience and what you'll actually be doing while you study. This is a really big focus of what we do here at Federation Uni, ensuring that we provide a really high quality student experience for you, both in terms of the quality of the teaching, but the overall support and the experience that you receive. So we'll jump into a few questions. And Heather, I might start with you if that's okay. And particularly for those who might be joining us live or watching the recording who have maybe done their high schooling in the past or returning to study, or maybe have done a little bit of study at TAFE, how does university, I guess, differ from what they might have been doing previously?
So the main difference between school and university is that it's a lot more self-directed and flexible. And this can be an advantage and a disadvantage. You'll have all the material on your website, our Moodle, and you work through it at your own pace. And there is face-to-face classes and online classes, but you really need to be quite proactive to be getting the best out of all the resources.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Heather. Yeah, it's a sort of a different learning environment, as you said, a lot more independence, but also that onus, and you're sort of driving your own learning. Brad, I might throw to you to talk a little bit about how the courses are taught, so what students actually do while they're studying with us.
Yeah, that's a good question, Giuseppe. As far as the delivery of the classes, there's probably a bit of a mixture. I guess for the Bachelor of Secondary Health and Phys Ed, it's obviously, if you're going to be a health and phys ed teacher, it's going to be very practical in nature. So a lot of our classes are face-to-face due to the fact that you are needing to be there and experience the practical side of things. Now, admittedly, we did have to go through the tough years of COVID where we had to try to teach people how to be health and phys ed teachers online, which was something that wasn't a great experience, but we just had to roll with the punches. So we've got a lot of practical classes where you actually take on the role, I guess, of being students and at the same time being university students. So we learn through teaching, so hands-on practical content. There are some units that are more probably theoretical in base, sort of the way that they're taught. So we have classroom activities that we have also practical activities, or there might be a bit of a blend. As far as probably the courses in general, there's often face-to-face tutorials, but then there's online content. So you would actually complete some online lectures before you would come to class, and they might be a mixture of short videos with quiz questions, or it might be what we call Moodle books, where you read some information, then you go to the next section, and then there's a video that you might watch, and then you might answer a couple of questions, and you get some feedback to say, yep, that's correct, you're on the right track, or it might be, no, you've a little bit confused there, what we're trying, the correct answer is, and so on. So there are some online units, what we call synchronous. So you actually jump online from anywhere as long as you've got an internet connection, and you'll be in an online classroom. We also have that flexibility that there are a few units that are asynchronous, so that you can jump on and work through the content at a time that suits you. Now, we know that the world has changed. There's a lot of people that have part-time jobs, or they might have kids, or they might have other sort of commitments that they can't actually get to university 3 or 4 times a week, or 4 or 5 times. Like back in the day when I went through, it was essentially 4 or 5 days, and you were expected to be there for the face-to-face lectures and so on. So the world has changed. So we have a lot of people that have kids, or they've got full-time jobs, and they work around those. So it's a bit of a mixed bag as to how the actual content is taught.
Excellent. That's a great overview. Thanks, Brad. Wondering if each of you could perhaps also talk about field placements. So obviously you touched on that, Brad, that there is that practical experience that students gain, but perhaps expand a little bit more on what the field placement experience is like, and some of the other opportunities that students would gain as they're studying.
Yeah. Okay. Another really good one, Giuseppe. The placements, or what we tend to call them, or teaching grounds was the terminology we used to use. So during your 4 years of, say, the Bachelor of Secondary Health and Phys Ed, and it's fairly similar for the other secondary degrees and so on, you actually do placements that start off where you, in the first year, you don't have as much responsibility. So you don't feel like you're getting thrown in the deep end and you have to teach a class. It might be observation based, or it might be that you, as the placement goes on, you might take a little bit of responsibility. So it might be you run one activity for the first class. It might go for 10 or 15 minutes, and then your supervisor, who's the qualified teacher, then provides you feedback and so on. And as you get into your second, third and fourth years, the placements get a bit bigger and the expectations go up. So you then start taking more responsibility for the actual lessons that you're leading, or the activities you lead. So by the end of say your 4th year, you have bigger placements, that say 6-week placement, where you're actually pretty much in charge of that unit. Now, you've obviously got your student teacher there with you. You've got your supervisor there with you, you're the student teacher, and they will provide you as much support that you need. But the idea is, yeah, you're getting more and more control and responsibility as the degree goes on. So it's a minimum of 80 days that you're actually out in the schools. And the idea is, at the end of that 4 years, over those 80 days, you've actually picked up the confidence that when you then graduate, you're ready to go and you're ready to hit the ground running. And that's one of the things that Fed Uni graduates are known for. So for as long as I can remember, we get schools chasing our graduates, basically saying we want Fed students because they're ready to teach. And that's because of the considerable work that we do within our placement team, finding us great placement supervisors within schools and so on. So it's within my degree, and the secondary degree, it's the minimum of 80. I'll hand over, probably, Scotty, you'll be able to tell a little bit. There's obviously a little bit different with the SO5 or your course. So, but that's the probably general overview.
Yeah, definitely. So in the SPOE degree and also education studies, placement looks a little bit different. We've got what's called cooperative learning, where we have paid placement somewhere relevant to the degree you're studying. So in the SPOE degree, it's in the outdoor ed sector or in the sports sector. There are paid placements. And so in that 3-year degrees, there's 60 days of paid placement. And for SPOE, that happens over the back end of the degree. And so you'll go out and get on-the-job experience that you get paid for, that'll help you get your foot in the door of the industry. To make sure that you're ready to get there, we have a whole range of university-led field work as well in outdoor education. So it's not just 2-hour, 3-hour blocks of of practical learning. We sometimes go away for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. I think our longest trip is about 7 days of fieldwork for outdoor education. We go out, spend time in the outdoors, building up your experience, building up your leadership capacities and your ability to teach in those environments, which then feed into your co-op paid placement. So that's a little bit about the SPOE degree. And Heather, maybe you can tell everyone a little bit about education studies and how it looks in that degree.
Thanks, Scott. So in first year in Bachelor of Education Studies, we do a five-day placement. We're quite early on. So if you can handle the noise and the sticky fingers of the school kids. And then in second and third year, you do equivalent of about 30 days in second year, about 30 days in third year, doing paid placement within a school, not in a teacher role, in a teacher support role or in after school programs or the library or some other education role. And that could be where you work already. So we've got some really great options in education studies.
Excellent. That's great. Thanks for that overview of everybody. It's a great way, of course, to get that experience during your studies. And as was mentioned, it's all very well supported by the university. Brad, I might throw to you again. What's the sort of general time commitment that students need to put in while they're doing their studies with us?
So I guess with the full-time student is probably the easiest way to look at it. So within the, again, Bachelor of Secondary Health and Phys Ed, you would usually be doing 4 units per semester. So a simple rule of thumb is it's around about 10 hours per unit per week. So again, the flexibility of the way that the content is delivered is really, really appealing to a lot of students these days. So you might have, well, let's just say you've got 6 hours of face-to-face classes. You then have on top of that, the additional hours to get you up to that 40 would be then the online content. So whether that's the pre-class activities, so that when you get to your tutorials or your practice, you know what's going on and your lecturers and your tutors will talk about that. Or it might be the Moodle books, or it might be the tasks that you have relating to weekly content, or it might be assessment tasks and so on. So it is a busy schedule. Like it's not as if you're just doing an hour here, an hour there. You are looking at sort of 40 hours. But ideally, you're served well by doing those 40 hours so that we know that you're giving yourself the best chance to be successful, that at the end of your 4-year degree, you're going to be ready to hit the ground running and you'll have the skills required to be a great teacher.
Yeah, that's excellent, Brad. And I guess, as you say, the various ways you can access that material and the online and the flexibility you get with that is a great way to deliver. So that's really great to hear. Just to wrap up this section, Scott, I might throw to you. Obviously, there may be some people returning to study and perhaps they need a little bit more assistance in terms of understanding the uni learning environment. What sort of support is provided by Federation Uni to new students who are coming in?
Yeah, definitely. So obviously your lecturers and tutors are able to guide you through your studies and give you advice on your assessments and what's required. But beyond that, there's a range of other resources available at Federation University. And one of my go-tos that I point students towards are learning skills advisors. So they're a free service where you can book one-on-one consultation with learning skills advisors, and they can help guide you through specific assessments or things that you might need to work upon to help you succeed in your studies. We also have library staff that you can go to, and they can give you guidance on things like referencing or some of the academic elements of the degree that you might need to brush up your skills on. And there's a range of online resources as well that you can go to, self-paced in your own time. But there's also real people that you can go and speak to in the learning skills advisors. So yeah, depending on what your needs are, there's a range of different options for everyone.
Yeah, that's excellent, Scott. I think it's a big reason why we're rated so highly for student support as well, which obviously leads to student success. So that's great. Thanks for that overview, everybody. So we'll keep moving on and talk about some of the skills and knowledge that students gain while they're studying at Federation University and undertaking education with us. Heather, I might start with you if you might be able to provide us with a brief overview of some of the typical course content and units that are covered while students are studying with us.
Thank you. So our courses, our units are called things like literacy and numeracy, teaching and learning, youth and child development. They're three of our first year courses to get you going in the program. Then you'll do things like curriculum units, which is how to teach, early childhood, literacy, health, or whatever. We then also run some particular classes for welfare and support, which is a worry for our students. How will they do classroom management? How will they support the children in the schools which have all sorts of problems at the moment? So we have particular classes on that. We have some units and classes for placement support, and then we'll also have some university style courses on the content, because if you're going to teach the students, you need to have more content knowledge than they do. So we have some courses particularly on those.
Excellent. That's a great overview. Thanks very much, Heather. I'll hand back to you as well, Heather, just perhaps to provide an overview of the Bachelor of Education courses that we offer in terms of placements and also, as we mentioned, the increase in responsibility over time.
So this links back to what we said before, that in the first year, everyone does 5 days placement just to make sure they're in the right career. And then in second year, we do 15 days. Third year, you do 2 lots of 15 days. And in fourth year, you do 30 days, which and you gradually get more and more responsibility. The first year you might do mainly active observation and helping with small groups. Second year you're taking a few hours every now and again, to a fourth year where you're pretty well running the class or the classes for 4 weeks or so, with support from your mentor teacher. And you get a nice range of different settings. So because you're doing the 4 bigger placements, you might try, a rural school, a regional school, a city school, a private school. You get a nice variety. You get to choose some, and some will be chosen based on where you live. Most
Excellent.
of our placements at the moment get some sort of scholarship, and some are fully paid, depending which program you're in.
Excellent. Yeah, there's certainly a wide range of other scholarships and supports available too, which is something we can advise you on when you apply, and lots of information also available on the Federation website. So certainly worth looking into and applying for. Next, I'll hand over to Scott to provide an overview of our Bachelor of Sport, Physical and Outdoor Education. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, it's a 3-year degree and there's a large amount of field work involved for the outdoor education units. So we aim at, first of all, getting students comfortable being in the outdoors, starting to understand those environments and what it's like to be in those environments, understanding weather and some of the ecological aspects. And then we look at how we lead groups in those sorts of places. And then some different approaches to teaching and learning in those environments. Similarly, for the phys ed units, we cover some of, and Brad will probably add to this later, but teach you some of the content knowledge about health, healthy lifestyles, physical activity, the human body, some of that specific content knowledge, and then different approaches for how we might teach some of that content in practical settings in ways that will engage your students. And so that's scaffolded throughout your degree. So we start off entry level, and then the knowledge and difficulty of the units build as the degree goes on. And then, as I mentioned earlier, towards the back end of the degree, we start integrating the paid placements, where you start working in real life settings with some of our industry partners and getting on the job experience that will set you up for hopefully a long and enjoyable career. So really this degree is for those that are interested in health and physical activity, the outdoors, and working in outdoor environments, or not necessarily, they want to be involved in education, but not necessarily always in a classroom. There can be a good balance of in the classroom and outside the classroom with this sort of degree. Yeah, I might leave it at that.
Excellent. great photo there of the great outdoors, which is another great feature of the course, which is awesome.
Gibbons Hut in the Bogong High Plains, one of my favourite places there.
Oh, it looks magnificent. Thanks, Scott. That's great. I'll now hand over to Brad to provide an overview of the Bachelor of Secondary Education, Health and PE. Thanks, Brad.
No worries. So as you can see there, when we start talking about who would this type of degree be of interest to? So it's essentially those that are wanting to be secondary school teachers, but you want to specialise in health and physical education. So if you're one of those students in secondary school where you really loved health and phys ed and you like the idea of being active and a hands-on teacher, and you probably also have an interest in helping people learn, this is the type of degree that you might be really interested in. So you can see there, as far as the other specialisations that we mentioned briefly before, there's a couple of the options that you can actually use as what we call our minor. So again, your health and phys ed, and you can teach health at a VCE level, PE at a VCE level, but you can also then teach another stream or another subject. It might be maths or science or psychology, or outdoor education might be another option. So if you're toing and froing, you want to teach, you want to do PE, but I love outdoor ed as well, then you can actually do both of those. So that might be something that you might be interested in. As far as what it looks like, as you can see, it's just on that next slide. Giuseppe, if you're happy just to slide to that next one for me. You can see there, we've touched on it briefly, but as far as it's obviously a 4-year degree, you can see that the 80 days plus as far as placement goes. You're going to learn through applied types of movement activities, so engaging practical school-based placements. There's also the science of movement. So if you want to learn about, okay, how do people learn most effectively? So if we can understand what helps people learn, that's going to hold us in really good stead to be a good teacher, but particularly if you're talking about skill acquisition in motor skills or the fundamentals of movement, that's the kind of stuff that we would teach you. Probably the thing that I love the most, so I went through this type of degree back when before I became a health and phys ed teacher. The game-based learning is something that I loved. I actually just like running around and playing games. And the best thing is you actually learn how to teach it by doing it. So you might be in a class of 20 students and you actually play games, and we break it down as to what actually makes up a good game to help people to be able to learn. We do lifelong physical activities. So one of the units that I do, for example, we actually go out and we learn about how you can actually use community groups and facilities. So we go to a lawn bowls club, we go to a croquet club, we go tenpin bowling, we go to the driving range where we do golf, we do archery, we do actual lots of lifelong physical activity subjects, and you actually get to experience it. So you'll go to the driving range one week, and then you'll go, we go to a croquet club where the members of that club actually show us what it's like and what PE teachers can do when they visit their club. And we get some members come out and actually teach us about the ins and outs of croquet and lawn bowls. And so it's some real hands-on practical content, so that when you're out PE teaching or health and phys ed teaching, you're ready to go. So we also, you can see there, contemporary pedagogy and assessment. So we look at what it makes up good assessment within the health and phys ed space. We look at the different styles of teaching that'll help you make decisions about, right, this is what's in front of me as a class. The best style to help them learn would be, and then you obviously pick one of the contemporary pedagogical approaches to teach that. So yeah, if you like running around, you like the idea of being fit and healthy, and most importantly, you like the idea of sharing with someone else about the benefits, but also how to be physically healthy, then it might be a great opportunity that you could sort of help younger learners and hopefully help them become sort of fit and healthy and active within their lives.
It's fantastic. Thanks very much, Brad and Scott and Heather. Really great overview of those courses, and just such breadth and such comprehensiveness within those courses in terms of what you cover in terms of the unit. So big thank you for covering all that off. We'll now move into the final section here, talking about student success and career outcomes. So perhaps Heather, I might start with you in terms of some of the outcomes and benefits of studying our degrees, and then I'll throw it then to Brad and Scott as well as part of the discussion.
So everybody who finishes our education degrees gets a job if they want. Some choose to travel and have families and so forth, but everybody who wants a job get a job in the field of their choice. Most students who study education end up in schools. Some also end up in local councils. I'm thinking of one student who ended up being in charge of all the volunteers for their local council, or training in Bunnings or Coles running their programs. So there are other jobs as well if you're not keen on just straight schools. Our university has a great reputation for being prepared for teaching and being prepared for going through the VIT registration process. And one of the reasons is that we integrate our placement with many of our units, and we have a very positive relationship with many local schools, education centres, thinking daycares and early childhood centres here, to help with our placements and employment of our students.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Heather. Brad and Scott, did you have any other, I guess, examples of outcomes for students or any stories you can share about success that they've gone on to?
Yeah, I do. I can jump in first if you like, Scotty. Again, probably continuing on from Heather mentioned about the reputation that our graduates have. We've, for a long time now, had a fantastic reputation for students, graduates, teachers that are ready to hit the ground running. So the last couple of years that I've been the course coordinator, I actually got to the stage last year, I copied an email because I'd sent it so often. I think I got up to about the sixth time that I said to a teacher colleague that I've got, friends who are in the industry, we constantly get schools all over the country emailing us saying, Rotto, we need a maths PE teacher, what have you got? And I actually copied it because I'd sent it about 6 times and I just had it there on my desktop, and I had to apologise and say, look, I'm so sorry, we've actually got none left, because every one of our graduates had a job last year before they'd actually graduated. So, which is an amazing feat, and it reflects really well on our course in that, well, as disappointing as it was for the teachers that were chasing teachers, so principals, assistant principals, health and phys ed teachers who were contacting me and say, right, what do you got? I was pretty proud of the fact that we actually had none left because they all had jobs, because that's a really good reflection on what our graduates bring to the table. There is it's sad to say there's a massive teacher shortage at the moment. So as Heather said, whoever wants a job, once you graduate, you are going to get a job. It's an absolute guarantee. And I hate to say that I'm fearful the shortage is probably only going to get worse. If you look at the teachers that are probably going to retire in the next sort of 5 to 10 years, just based on age. So as sad as that is for our education system, it's brilliant for those who want to get out there and make a difference. And there is a lot to like or love about when you can see on a kid's face the first time you've actually been able to teach them something. So health and phys ed, I still look back, the smile you'll get on a kid's dial when they learn how to catch a ball for the first time, or they learn how to do a specialised type of punt because you've been able to teach them that. It's an amazing feeling. So if you like the idea of helping people and teaching people and you want a job, it's the time you're at a great time to be entering the profession of teaching, because there are jobs everywhere. So that's probably the thing that I take most pleasure in, is knowing that our graduates get snapped up, whether it's in the Northern Territory. So we've got a couple of schools in the Northern Territory that ring us every year. I've got a lot of colleagues that I've worked with over the years in Victoria and New South Wales. They're constantly chasing us. So it is something that we are very proud of here at Fed, that the reputation of our graduates that they have.
Nice one. Well, I might chime in with one good news story, because you might be sitting there watching this recording or here live with us today thinking, I can't see myself being a teacher or an educator just yet. I'm interested in this. It sounds great, but I just can't see myself there. And that's totally normal. I had a student from a few years ago message me last year after they just got their dream job, and they said, I've just got my dream job. I'm so excited, and I wanted to thank you because back when I was doing such and such a unit, I was struggling. I was really battling, and this was one of the outdoor ed units, and they did a long fieldwork trip, and they were really struggling to get through the experience and step up into a leadership role and deal with being out for such a long duration. But they found that despite it being hard, despite them being out of their comfort zone, they pushed through and succeeded on that particular experience. And it gave them so much confidence to finish their degree. And then this student drew upon, well, this graduate drew upon this experience to go, should I go for this job? Is it out of my depth? Is it out of my comfort zone? Can I do this? They applied, got the job, and then started working in their dream job. And they pinpointed that particular unit back in their degree that gave them the confidence to do what they never would have thought they would have done otherwise. And I think that's the thing about university studies, is that it can be daunting. It can be long, 3 years, 4 years plus of study, huge commitment, and you're not sure whether you can do this thing that you're aiming to do. But that's what we're here for at the university, is to support you through your studies and to get you to where you would like to get to, even though you're not sure how at this point in time. It's our job to help you get there.
That's a great story. Thanks for sharing that, Scott. And yeah, big thanks to Brad and Heather as well for providing those insights. Just wonderful to hear. And yeah, they're literally life-changing experiences students have that really set them up for their future career. So big thank you for sharing that. Just to wrap up, I just wanted to talk very briefly about the next steps. So we've heard some really great information from Scott, Brad, and Heather, some really great stories they've shared about student experiences and what you'll actually gain while you're doing your degree. But if you are looking at taking the next step, as Scott said, and as all the presenters have said, we're here to help you. One of the big things to do to start with is to really look at the entry requirements for those courses. So you can find all of that very conveniently online if you just jump to study.federation.edu.au. In general, for these courses, for the initial teacher education degrees, you're looking at a minimum of a unit 1 and 2 in general maths or higher, or alternatively a 3 and 4 maths of any type. And a bare minimum is that you will need to have done a VC unit 3 and 4 English with a study score of at least 25. At a state level, and this is not just for Federation University, it's all universities across Victoria, you will need to have at least an ATAR of 70. But if you're applying for some form of special consideration as part of your VTech application, let's say you're from a regional or remote area, you've had financial difficulties, you've had an illness or some other personal circumstances that have impacted your studies, that will help to get you additional bonus points, which potentially may get you over that 70 minimum. But as Heather mentioned before, we do have the Bachelor of Education Studies if you would like to look at a pathway, or potentially the SPOE degree that Scott's been talking about, so the Bachelor of Sport, Physical and Outdoor Education, as 2 different types of pathways which don't have that minimum of 70. They have a much lower ATAR of 50. One other thing to keep in mind, though, for the other initial teacher education courses is that there is what's called a CASPER test. This is an additional online, what they call a situational judgment test, and it basically looks at your own personal and professional personality traits. It'll provide you with some scenarios, and there's no necessarily right or wrong answer. It's just to really get an assessment of your suitability as a teacher and how you would respond to certain circumstances. So that's all part of the assessment, and it's done online, and you can find links to that via our website. And very finally, to take that next step and actually apply, if you are a Year 12 student who's watching this at the moment, no doubt you'll get lots of information from your school, but that is all done via VTAC, the Victorian Tertiary Admissions Centre. And if you're a non-Year 12 student or a mature age student returning to study later in life, you can, of course, apply directly to Federation Uni. You don't need to go through VTAC. So all that information there is online, but I've just put that screen there that you can take a shot of, or go to the website for more information. It's all available at your fingertips.
So Giuseppe, I'd like to remind you about the FAST program.
Yes,
so
go for
if
it, Heather.
students don't get an ATAR of what they need, or maybe you didn't do exams in year 12, or you've got some TAFE courses or something, we have our FAST program, which is a 6 months getting ready for university course, which is a great way to get back into university if you didn't have a good year 12 or you've had a bit of a break.
Excellent. No, it's a great reminder. Thanks, Heather. Yeah, lots of pathways and options available. And yeah, as we've been saying throughout this whole presentation, if you don't think you've got the requirements or you need some guidance through your application, we're here to help. So please reach out to us at any time. Lots of options available. So that basically brings us to the end of the formal presentation. You are certainly welcome to post any questions you've got in the chat. We're here for at least a couple more minutes. So certainly encourage anybody who's joining us online to post a question in the chat and we can go through that now. But perhaps just a couple of questions I might just put to the academic staff on the line at the moment. I guess a bit of a personal question. I might start with you, Heather. What inspired you to actually pursue a career in education?
Back in the day, when I was a student myself at secondary school, I was unsure what I wanted to do. And back in the day, women didn't tend to go to university, but I knew I really did want to go to university. And then I thought, maybe I could be a teacher. And I told my friends at the time, I'm thinking of doing teaching. And they said, of course you're going to be a teacher. You've been teaching us for years. So I was probably one of those people that was a teacher without even realising, without any qualifications, and it just became a natural thing. And I did all right at secondary school, but once I got to university, where I got to focus on what I was really my interests, I thrived, and I've never stood back. I've really just moved forward since then. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Heather. Thanks for sharing that. Brad, what about you?
Yeah, I think probably when I was in year 12, even probably halfway through year 12, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I think I was probably fairly immature, I guess, at that stage. I knew I loved sport and I loved being active, and I loved being involved in physical activity. And I have to admit there were a few teachers I didn't really love when I was going through secondary school, but there was also probably two or three, probably two in particular that I really connected with, as far as I just thought, geez, that's great. He looks like he's having a great time. And one of them was a female. She looks like she really enjoys her work. And I thought maybe that's something that I'd like to do. And I sort of helped out with a little bit of coaching stuff. So as a probably an older junior, I suppose. And I thought, well, coaching and teaching, there are some similarities. And I thought, well, I enjoyed that. And I have to admit, I had my parents said, geez, I get good holidays as well. So I thought, oh, actually, that sounds all right too. So I sort of went into it probably, and I have to admit, I wasn't 100% sure if that's what I wanted to do. But I thought, well, I guess you don't know until you actually have a go. And by the time I'd got to the end of my first semester, probably halfway through my first semester, I knew that I'd made the right decision. I had an absolute ball going through uni, and uni is good fun. Like you're an adult, you've got a lot more control over your learning. It's not like secondary school. In fact, the 4 years of university were amazing. So I look back and I've still got lifelong friends who were very, very close in the Bachelor of Health and Phys Ed degree that we were doing. You do lots of swimming and running and fitness activities, all those kinds of things where you get to know each other really well. So, but yeah, so probably the positive experiences I'd had with teachers, but also the fact that I just love sport was sort of where I started. Yeah, so that's sort of how I got into it, and sort of haven't looked back since.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing, Brad. And Scott.
Yeah, so probably in many ways a similar story to Brad. I grew up playing football and cricket, and if I wasn't playing football and cricket, I was riding my bike, I was going to the beach, I was going camping, spending my time outdoors. I couldn't sit still. And then I went to university and realized that there's this thing called outdoor education that could be a job, that I could get paid to share my love of the outdoors and being active with others. And I didn't go into being a teacher. I was an outdoor educator in a different form. I didn't work for schools initially. I worked with youth at risk of homelessness and showing them how the outdoors can help them develop different skills and abilities to help them through the situations they were in. And then I worked into school settings and commercial settings and whatnot. And I just found that I had a love of sharing experiences with others, and in particular experiences in the outdoors in amazing places, and sharing these places that I loved with other people. And yeah, it's became my career.
It's fantastic. A big thanks to all three of you for sharing those stories. Yeah, I think it's obviously a path that you've been passionate about, but it's interesting to hear the origins of that. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it's really great for the audience. We're sort of going a little bit over time at the moment, so we'll probably wrap up there. But I did want to provide some information for everybody about how you can reach out to us at any stage. So if you'd like more information, obviously the website is a fantastic resource with all the information that we provide on entry requirements, events, course details, a whole range of other information about studying at Federation. You can, of course, call us directly via our 1-800 number, which is 1-800-FED-UNI, or 1-800-333-864. If you like, you can drop us an email at futurestudents@federation.edu.au. And of course, we would absolutely love to see you in person. So the best way to get that full uni experience before you study with us is, of course, to come along to an open day. And we have a huge number of events and activities and great fun activities and free food and games and giveaways. It's a really, really amazing experience. And that all happens in August. So you can have a chat to great staff like Brad, Scott, and Heather, learn about what we offer, and of course, speak to our current students as well. So you can learn more about that at federation.edu.au/open day. We'll wrap it up there, but a big thank you to everybody who's joined us live today, and also everybody who's watching the recording. And of course, a big thank you to our three presenters, Brad, Scott, and Heather. Thank you very much for your time, guys. And thank you to everybody who's joined us today. We hope you have a great evening, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you study with us in the future. Thank you, everybody.